2020s has served as the lowest ratings for hip-hop in a decade and has failed to dominate the music charts for the first time in a long time. Although hip-hop has been the most listened to genre of music in 2024, it had a 21.7% share of the US music market, down from its peak of 28.2% in 2019. And in 2020, hip-hop was the most popular genre in terms of total music consumption, surpassing rock. But its growth has slowed down drastically since its surge in the 2010s. But what many people don't know is that hip-hop was actually hanging on by a thread much earlier. The year is 2004, and hip-hop around this time was starting to become irrelevant compared to its past decades of the 80s and the 90s. Jay-Z had went on a fake retirement, Eminem went on a near decade-long hiatus after his Encore album, and although there would be an emergence of Kanye West and a new subgenre known as trap music, which seen the birth of some of the greatest southern artists like T.I., Gucci Mane, Jeezy, Boosie, and Lil Wayne, the genre still felt like it lost its mainstream aura. And this can all be thanks to the crunk era. For those who don't know, crunk music was a type of hip-hop music that came from the southern United States during the late 1990s. Crunk rose from the dirty South hip-hop scenes of Atlanta and Memphis to a national level thanks to hit tracks by Lil Jon, the East Side Boys, Ying Yang Twins, and 3 6 Mafia. Because crunk music started to become popular in the hip-hop community due to its dancey, high-energy party vibe, many artists and even some labels started to push this type of music. Unknowingly to them, they were only adding flame to the fire of a dying breed. The early 2000s saw crunk step into the hip-hop mainstream, with major artists like Usher and Ciara embracing the style with hit singles like Yeah and Goodies, while newer artists like P.D. Pablo rode interest in crunk to stardom with tracks like Freak a Leak. The chief architect behind many of these singles was Lil Jon, who served as a producer and writer on many of these tracks, and a guest performer on Yeah with Ludacris. Lil Jon also scored hits with his own releases, most notably Get Low, a 2003 collaboration with Ying Yang Twins that reached number 2 on the Hot 100 chart, and generated remixes with Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Busta Rhymes, and Pitbull. Another popular artist that came from this era was Soulja Boy, with his hit single, Crank That, which spent 7 weeks at the number 1 spot on the Billboard charts. So it was clear to see that crunk was gaining major popularity. But its popularity would be the exact thing to nearly kill the genre, because artists would start to dismiss music quality for popularity. See, although crunk music was very popular in the mainstream around this time, there wasn't really any real quality to it. The simple lyrics that were only geared towards a party vibe really killed the substance of what true hip-hop really was: poetry. And despite its popularity, there was still a narrative going around that hip-hop was dead, with many big figures in the genre like Lauryn Hill and Nas feeling the same way. I mean, Nas released a whole album called Hip Hop Is Dead, so you could really see it from that. This also was the reason for the Soulja Boy and Ice-T beef, which resulted in one of the most funniest clips in internet history. Although the crunk era might have nearly sunk hip-hop into the ground, there was one subgenre that saved it all: trap. Believe it or not, trap actually derived from crunk, with both of them coming from southern parts of the US like Atlanta and Memphis. Trap music was said to be started by southern artists like T.I., Gucci Mane, Jeezy, Boosie, and Lil Wayne. But most notably, T.I., Gucci Mane, and Jeezy, who are known to be the godfathers of trap music. For those who aren't aware, the word trap comes from the shortening of the word trap house, which is basically an abandoned house, usually accompanied by drug dealers, where various drug deals take place. Trap music is basically a subgenre of hip-hop that talks about the events around the trap house, such as major drug deals and the creation of some drugs. To better understand how trap music became so popular and well-loved, we have to take a short history lesson and go back to the origins of hip-hop. As hip-hop came out of the ghetto and into the commercial mainstream in the 80s, groups emerged such as Public Enemy, Rakim, KRS-One, and Native Tongues, who were known to rap a street poetic of social demands. Basically, old nigga shit. Then later, in the 90s, artists like NWA, UGK, 3 6 Mafia, Master P, Dr. Dre, and Ice-T, among others, started the subgenre known as gangster rap, talking about the violent lifestyles of the less fortunate neighborhoods of America, and leaving aside the more political and poetic style of earlier rap. This transformation of the genre spread to mystical styles by 3 6 Mafia to reach Gucci Mane and his Trap House in 2005. But the first rapper to actually drop an album under this subgenre would be T.I. in 2001, named I'm Serious. Granted, around this time, between 2004 to 2007, trap was starting to bring hip-hop back to its feet, but it would still be a long and hard road to get it back to its mainstream levels, like in the 80s and 90s. But lo and behold, unknowingly to everyone, there will be one Chicago rapper that would turn everything up a notch. Before being known as one of the greatest rappers of all time, Kanye West was just a local producer, making beats in his room at his mom's house. It was only until he caught the attention of Jay-Z was where he would start to get recognition, producing songs for Jay-Z's album On the Blueprint, and would also produce hits for major stars like Ludacris and Janet Jackson. Although Kanye is universally loved today for his rapping skills, back then, no one really cared for Kanye beyond his production skills, being ignored by multiple music representatives. Thanks to his middle-class upbringing and usefulness in the production chair, most label executives didn't want to take Kanye seriously as a rapper because his image didn't match that of his rapping peers, and he was turned away time and time again. However, it wasn't until a car accident in 2002 that left him with his jaw wired shut. Here is where he would write and record the song Through the Wire to express his feelings about the incident, which got major love from other popular figures in the industry. This track then became the foundation of Kanye's debut release and the rest of his career, because through this, he released maybe the greatest debut album of all time, The College Dropout, in 2004. Continuing on, the mid-2000s would serve as the Kanye era, with his next two successful albums being Late Registration in 2005 and Graduation in 2007. And throughout the mid-2000s, Kanye would effortlessly rack up awards after awards, and it would seem that everything was going perfect for him, until they weren't. Out of the success of his Graduation album in the beginning of 2007, Kanye's stardom went to new heights, and around this time, he also had plans to soon be married to his fiancée Alexis Pfeiffer, and his life and career looked to be going perfect, up until November 10, 2007, when his mother and his best friend, Donda West, passed away. Donda's death served as the negative turning point in Kanye's career, because after losing his mother, he felt that he lost the one pride and joy in his life that was keeping him sane in all the madness. And slowly, he started to fall into a deep depression. Soon after, Kanye and his fiancée would call it quits due to complications in their relationship, which further sent Kanye on a spiral. You might ask the question, well, what does Kanye have to do with trap music if he never made or had any correlation to gangster rap? But believe it or not, if it wasn't for him, the genre in itself would be dead. See, Kanye's fourth album was supposed to be the end to his school theme titles being named Good Ass Job, which was supposed to go in line after graduation and getting a job. But after all the pain and depression he was dealing with, he decided to scrap that album and make a new album that told the story of what he was dealing with and going through at the time. And in 2008, Kanye released his revolutionary album 808s and Heartbreak. But what made this album different from the last three was not just the title and theme, but the incorporation of autotune and the heavy use of 808s, which is a staple in hip-hop culture today. Although the album was heavily criticized by the media and the older hip-hop audience, it seemed that the younger new school generation loved it and started to incorporate it into their own music, which gave birth to artists like Drake, Future, and Kid Cudi, who in their own right can be the reason for the success of trap music, due to their influence birthing rappers such as Travis Scott, Young Thug, Lil Uzi, The Weeknd, Migos, and much more. This can only be added to the genius of Kanye, thinking and doing things way before anyone could catch on. Enter the 2010s, and with the new innovation of 808s and autotune, the world of hip-hop blossomed, with artists like Drake, who became one of the best-selling artists of all time, which in itself also helped to push hip-hop back into the mainstream light. Drake's first 6 albums from 2009 to 2015 are regarded as prime Drake, and rightfully so, because combined, these albums amassed 2.8 million first-week sales and 5 #1 spots on the Billboard Top 200 chart. Nicki Minaj was also the driving force to making hip-hop more mainstream in the early 2010s, having 3 top 3 albums during this time. Nicki Minaj's influence also can be seen in the explosion of new female artists. Even though she wasn't the first successful female rapper, with the likes of Foxy Brown, Missy Elliott, and Lil Kim, she was the first to have an influence on a mainstream level. The 2010s also seen the resurgence of older rappers like Jay-Z and Eminem, with also the lyrical aspect coming back with artists like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. With numbers starting to rise, hip-hop was beginning to get its bone back and started to become the most listened to genre in the world by far. Hip-hop had become so mainstream at this point, rap icon LL Cool J began a 5-year run as the host of the Grammys. Also, the early 2010s seen the birth of a new subgenre known as drill rap, which was started by Chief Keef in Chicago. Chief Keef can also be credited to be one of the most influential artists of this decade, with how far the popularity of drill has become, spreading to other states like New York and Atlanta, to even internationally with UK and Italy. Rap had started to become so accepted by gatekeepers that Kendrick Lamar earned 11 nominations for his 2015 album To Pimp a Butterfly, and when the album lost to Taylor Swift's 1989 album, the fallout was massive, delivering the standard racial bias claims, but also featuring commentators who claim Kendrick Lamar's album should have won because his was a better piece of work. This shows the seismic shift in how rap was perceived by the music industry, who were now having a rapper hold court on their awards and acknowledging one of rap's most respected artists as creating one of music's best albums of the year. Dr. Dre, who was also a mentor to Kendrick and a former member of the Godfathers of Gangsta Rap NWA, made his own news throughout the 2010s. In 2014, the Beats Electrical company he co-founded with record industry titan Jimmy Iovine was sold to Apple for $3 billion. It remains the biggest deal for a company owned by a rapper. Also, the 2015 biopic on the group Straight Outta Compton grossed more than $200 million worldwide at the box office. At the time, it was the highest growing film by a black actor. In addition to its commercial success, the film was nominated for an Oscar and won 28 awards, including the AFI Award for Movie of the Year, MTV Movie Award for True Story, and 2 NAACP Image Awards. During this time, rap was finally on the world's biggest stages. Despite having been virtually unbookable for anything other than club dates in the 80s and 90s, over concerns about violence and low ticket sales, it wasn't until the success of the Hard Knock Life Tour with Jay-Z, DMX, Redman, and Method Man in 1999, and the Up in Smoke Tour with Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, and Eminem, that rappers became a safe and reliable draw at larger venues. Now, virtually every festival of note in the 2010s was anchored by a rap act. Then, Nielsen Music's 2017 year-end report revealed that hip-hop was the biggest music genre in the US, at least in terms of total consumption. 8 of the 10 most listened to artists of the year were hip-hop acts, and disproving those who felt the genre was losing creative or commercial steam. Rap had a 25% growth in consumption in 2017 as compared to 2016. As the year 2018 and 2019 came around, hip-hop was only getting bigger and bigger. But unfortunately, something would happen that would knock everything off course. We now enter in the 2020s, where TikTok dances would start to take over the internet. Not only that, but the music as well. 2020 was a rough year for everyone. With the Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality, this year was one to remember. But the most memorable moment of this year was the COVID-19 pandemic that spread across the whole world, causing a global pandemic. And since everyone was at home, bored, with nothing to do in quarantine, everyone decided to flock to TikTok and ride the trend of doing TikTok dances. The dances weren't the only thing to make TikTok popular though, but the music as well. See, although TikTok is known for its dances, the music behind the dance was more so becoming more popular than the dance itself. And with TikTok being the most popular social media at the time, even still today, artists started to catch on to the movement. TikTok would begin to produce songs that weren't even that good to hit the Billboard charts, just because how big the platform was, which then seen artists and labels starting to adapt to the trend of making songs that were more geared towards a dancey party vibe, replacing the lyrical and angelic production of what made hip-hop so commercially loved in the first place. Similar to the crunk era, which might sound good on the surface, but if we look back and see what this type of music being popular for hip-hop has done, we could see that history is now repeating itself. Because now with music more geared towards TikTok, hip-hop would start to lose its substance, and with more and more artists starting to get big off this movement, it would serve to be catastrophic for the genre. Since similar to crunk music, although the music might have been popular in the community, the commercial success would start to dwindle. In 2023, hip-hop seemed to take a large fall off in terms of top 10 hits. Billboard reports that hip-hop fell to 3rd place after country saw a dramatic rise to 23% of total songs, which was tied with pop. The 3 6 Mafia legend Juicy J even took to Instagram to start a dialogue about hip-hop and its alleged 40% decline in sales.
What are we, as rappers, producers, composers, etc. Gonna do about this shit, because it's down 40% this year. Check the charts. Do your research. This is a fact.
And in 2023, it took 6 months for an album to go #1. But it wasn't only albums, but singles as well. Because it wasn't until September when Doja Cat's Paint the Town Red snapped a dry spell that had lasted for over a year. And by the end of the year, only 4 rap albums had hit #1, compared to 12 in 2022. In the past few years, hip-hop has started to lose some of its aura. And with the artists that made hip-hop rise again starting to go past their prime, it's hard to say where the genre will go in the next coming years. Will there be another artist that will bring some revolutionary aspect to the genre to bring the hype back, similar to Kanye? Will hip-hop continue to decrease more and more in popularity? Although hip-hop might be dying, it seems like it's starting to make a resurgence. Because in January, major artists like 21 Savage, Kid Cudi, and Benny the Butcher all dropped high-quality albums, which set the genre up for great success in the coming months. Rob also saw great commercial success, with Jack Harlow starting his 5-week reign at #1 with his single Loving On Me, and 21 Savage topping the charts with his #1 album American Dream for 2 weeks straight. Then in February, Kanye West dropped his long-awaited album with Ty Dolla $ign called Vultures, which saw great commercial success and was the first #1 album ever released by an independent artist. The album spent 2 weeks at Billboard #1, and the song Carnival featuring Playboi Carti went #1 on the Hot 100 charts for songs. Then in March, Future and Metro Boomin released their highly anticipated album We Don't Trust You, that had fans in shock with what they had listened to. This combination of Metro and Future served as one of the best albums of the year, and it had many superstar features on it, like Playboi Carti, Travis Scott, Rick Ross, The Weeknd, and the one man who started a civil war, Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar had broken his silence with a verse that put the game in shock by calling out Drake and J. Cole. Metro and Future had bars throughout the album that had taken aim at Drake as well, with a Captain America Civil War-esque shift being made. One side made by Kendrick, Future, The Weeknd, Rick Ross, and Metro, which took aim at the side of J. Cole and Drake, and like that, also spent 3 weeks straight at the #1 position. In response to this, J. Cole responded with a surprise mixtape of songs that he had recorded while touring with Drake. The final song on the album, titled 7-Minute Drill, was considered as warning shots by Cole, which took direct aim at Kendrick. In even more surprising fashion, however, J. Cole removed the diss track from streaming services after he said he regretted making it and apologizing on stage. Future and Metro had already announced dropping a second album a few weeks after We Don't Trust You, which is titled We Still Don't Trust You. This new album also in #1 that was very much an R&B album with an additional EP on the end, with 7 additional tracks that were all rap. The album had features from The Weeknd, A$AP Rocky, Lil Baby, Ty Dolla $ign, and most shockingly, J. Cole. The feature left fans very confused, as many had thought that he was on Drake's side of the conflict, with this fact still being unclear. On April 13th, a leak on the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, left many fans excited about the coming weeks in terms of music. That leak turned out to be a completely real diss track from Drake's titled Push-Ups that attacked Future, The Weeknd, Metro Boomin, Rick Ross, and Kendrick directly by name. The track officially released on April 19th and was matched in the same week from a counter diss from Rick Ross. Drake then doubled down on his original diss track with a series of Instagram stories and a second diss track by Drake featuring AI verses from Snoop Dogg and Tupac, who are Kendrick's 2 biggest idols. Drake and Kendrick would then proceed to go back and forth with each other, dropping diss track after diss track, and it looked like hip-hop finally gained its aura back, because hip-hop hadn't seen this level of competition since the early 2000s between Nas and Jay-Z. Even with such a high-level battle taking the forefront of the discussion, there is still a great level of anticipation for projects coming from this year. The likes of A$AP Rocky, J. Cole, Kanye West, Playboi Carti, The Weeknd, Childish Gambino, and potentially Drake. Hip-hop is back to its once great form, similar to the years from 2015 to 2018, the late 90s to the early 2000s. The level of competition may be at an all-time high, and the quality and creativity level of the genre are at a point that we will remember for years to come. Another popular rapper that helped in bringing hip-hop back to its glory is Eminem, with his new album, The Death of Slim Shady, where he also dissed a multitude of rappers and celebrities. He even went as far as dissing the LGBTQ community and even obese people. Want to know about that? Click this video right there to find out.